Resample is a European project that focuses on people with COPD. The goal of Resample is to develop a technology that supports patients and caregivers. This technology will help patients manage their COPD and other chronic conditions. It is very important that this technology is accessible to all users. But how do we ensure that everyone can use the Resample technology? To find an answer to this, several concepts were developed and presented to people with COPD during an evaluation workshop. During this workshop, the goals when using the technology were first discussed, followed by the facilitators and barriers of using the app. Then, the most important components of the app were discussed, and finally, the three different concepts were assessed. Based on previous interviews, the needs and goals of people with COPD when using technology were analyzed. This led to a list of 10 goals. For example, minimalizing disease progression, being stable, being in control over the symptoms and the disease, and accepting the disease, and living a positive life. During the evaluation workshop, the goals were rated by people with COPD on their importance to determine which goals were most important to them. Independence was rated as most important, but other goals also seem to be important. These goals in using the technology will be used for further development. Furthermore, we looked at different types of users and what would make using the technology easier or more difficult for them. In doing so, we looked for facilitators and barriers related to trustworthiness, ease of use, supporting independence and emotional well-being. This has led to an extensive list of facilitators and barriers in the use of the app that can be taken into account in the design process. For trustworthiness, for example, it is important that the nurse looks at the progress in the app together with the patient, and that the app does not provide conflicting information. In the third part of the workshop, the different components of the application were ranked. First, based on the added value of the components for someone who lives with COPD for several years. Second, for someone who just got diagnosed with COPD. The most important components were sharing health information with the doctor, an exacerbation alert, a request to call, and learning to manage and prevent symptoms. In the last part of the workshop, the different concepts were evaluated. A couple new ideas were shared about how the technology could look like. Every idea was rated on expectations related to trustworthiness, the usability, increasing the independence, and improving emotional well-being. Finally, participants were asked whether they would use the technology if it would look like this. The first idea that was shared with the participants was the latest concept developed within the Resample project. On this screen, a weekly overview is presented at the top with the coach below to ask how the user feels today. Furthermore, there's an overview of open tasks visible, such as reporting today's symptoms, habits, and the weekly report. At the very bottom are options to go to an information library with information about COPD, a network where the users can see how others in their environment are working on achieving their goals, and behind the last option, the profile settings can be adjusted. The second idea was a newly developed concept which, however, was to a large extent the same as the previous one. However, this app has different home screen. It shows an overview of progress in achieving goals on a screen. This can also be a goal other than the step goal. Furthermore, important values are visible at a glance when opening the app. Other information can be found by clicking on an option at the bottom of the screen. These features can be enabled as soon as the user is ready for it. The features available depend on the person's purpose in using the app, such as how much information they want to see, and their expertise in using apps. People with more experience in dealing with COPD can choose to switch on all options immediately. The last new concept takes into account that not everyone is ready to use a symptom tracking app. That is why the technology in this concept is presented in a digital photo frame instead of a smartphone. This photo frame can be placed somewhere in the house of the user. During the day, there are several photos presented of, for example, family, friends, or a chosen theme such as nature. At the end of the day, a virtual coach comes into the picture and asks how things are going. By clicking on one of the emojis, the user is directed into a short questionnaire about the symptoms of the day. The next day, certain advice appears in the photo frame in the morning, for example, for starting or maintaining a healthy habit. At the end of the day, after the questionnaire, the person will be asked whether the advice has been followed, and if not, why not. From the evaluation of these concepts, it was concluded that the proposal for the app, with a dashboard with the progress of the step goal and quick insight into heart rate and oxygen content, received the best scores. The participants would prefer to use this technology to support them in learning how to manage their disease. Although the participants were also enthusiastic about the photo frame, this would not support them optimally. The participants were ready to read more information about COPD and would like to be able to use all the functionalities. For people with COPD who have less or no experience with the use of smartphones, the photo frame could still be a nice interim solution. In future research, it is important that people with COPD remain involved to ensure that the technology is well aligned with their needs. The results of the workshop will be taken into account as guidelines in the further development. As a result of this and other studies, a prototype will be developed and tested by people with COPD to identify new areas for improvement. Only in this way we can ensure that we understand what people need and that our technology is well developed. Would you like to be involved and think along with the Resample project? Please feel free to contact us. Thank you for your time and attention, the Resample team of RRD.